So in today's video, I wanted to talk about the correlation between hyperpop and metal, as well as its crossover in recent memory, and some of the implications of that, and why that isn't too bad of a mixture or something that should come out of left field if you actually look at the genres you are talking about, as well as their histories. We've been seeing bands take more hints from modern hyperpop recently, with Bring Me the Horizon incorporating it in their track Lost, and probably they're going to do it some more, considering projects like Black Dresses and 100 Gex are very noisy, very distorted, and have grown an affinity for taking different metal influences and metal subgenres and putting them into hyperpop. And there's also kind of been this resurgence of electronic music being incorporated into metal. I talked about that a lot in my A Rough Guide to Electronicore video about like what killed electronicore and what is bringing it back, with bands like Jaluka and bands like Electric Callboy incorporating dubstep and EDM into the formula. But if you go back into the 2000s and early 2010s, metal was being infused with electronic music, EDM music, dubstep so much. Synths weren't really the most unfamiliar territory. And even if you go back in very extreme genres, you can see bands like Emperor back in the 90s taking synths and icy synths and putting them into black metal. And the one thing I think people are forgetting is metalcore and post-hardcore music have always went hand in hand with a variety of different types of electronic music styles, and those are the genres that are being the most deeply impacted by this hyperpop craze. You're not seeing a brand new death metal band or black metal band pop up taking hyperpop influence in the same way that you're not seeing a bunch of hyperpop bands take from black metal or death metal. It's mostly the crossover of metalcore and post-hardcore music, which already have a foundation in the building blocks to sort of welcome in electronic music, taking from that and vice versa. And you gotta understand, a lot of these hyperpop artists that are in their early to mid to late 20s, they grew up in a time period where metalcore and post-hardcore music, the emo scenes, were buzzing, and so the bands that they grew up with and the influence that they took from is the thing that shaped them into the artists that they are today. And even if they're not making the exact kind of music that they listened to growing up, the imprint that left itself on them, it's going to lend itself to a lot of different creative influences, and it's going to ingrain itself in their memory because that's what bolstered them up into this position in the first place and gave them the inspiration to become musicians in the first place. And I would not be surprised if we don't see more metalcore bands and post-hardcore bands taking from hyperpop music, considering you have seen for years now this growing resurgence of electronics being put into those genres specifically, and even like alternative metal and alternative rock are having the stains of it put all across it. But on the flip side of that coin, hyperpop is inherently influenced by metal in many ways, both in tempo and construction, and how a lot of these artists are pulling from these heavy, distorted, noisy ideas. And noise music in and of itself is inherently a very rock and metal inspired thing. So even if you go back in like the 70s and the 80s, these bands were being influenced by the noisiness of some of the heaviest bands on the block. So when you kind of combine all of this, you start to see why this common ground isn't too unlike each other. Even in attitude, the dress styles of a lot of hyperpop artists are not that unlike what you got from goth and alternative metal people, or just quirky, weird, outcast metal and rock sort of vibes. Scene culture brought together a bunch of quirky little outcasts and oddballs, and I think hyperpop has sort of appealed to that same demographic, just in a completely different generation, giving this riot of a genre that brings people together that are the people society doesn't want, that maybe their personalities just conflict with what the norm is. And when you also look at the fact that so many hyperpop artists fit into like the LGBT category, and many metalcore and post-hardcore people fit into that category as well, whether it be the artists and bands themselves or the people that listen to them, you start to kind of see why these two genres are having so much overlap. They're coming from the same place. They're wearing their heart on their sleeves in the same place, at least in my personal opinion. But what are your guys' opinions on hyperpop being infused with metal or vice versa? Let me know down in the comment section below. What are your opinions of the genres just in general? I can't wait to hear it and discuss it with you guys. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.